Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I'm here today because we are approaching the end of February, which means it's time for a book haul. So that's what we're doing today. I have a bunch of books to talk about. If you scroll down below where I have listed out the books and put links of them to bookshop.org, you'll see that it's a very long list. I will say most of it is plays, which we're going to do at the end, except for one. And we're going to start with the books that were sent to me or gifted to me. And then we are going to move into books that I purchased for myself. And then we're going to finish with the plays, which I purchased for myself. Basically, the local used bookstore where I live restocked their play section. Like all of a sudden they had a huge influx of plays and they were very cheap. So I got a bunch of them. And that's why that's so big. And we'll talk about the other books as we go along. The first thing is something that I'm actually not going to list down below because I already own copies of this book. I believe I own 2 of them because it's a Pulitzer Prize winner. It's James Agye's A Death in the Family. And I'm not showing you the cover right now because the cover is why I had to purchase this. And it was only $2. So I figured, I'm just going to throw this in the collection. And I didn't actually pay money for it. I had credit at my local used bookstore. I've seen it there for a couple of months and I have wanted it. And I finally just decided this is bizarre enough to have in my Pulitzer collection. Ready? Look at that cover. I love a crazy vintage illustrated cover for a book, and this is a doozy. There's a butterfly woman holding 2 children on this cover. A Death in the Family is going to be an interesting Pulitzer Prize project because essentially these days there are 2 versions of the book, and we don't have time to get into that right now. Well, essentially, there's the version that was originally published and which won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, and then somewhere in the late 90s or early 2000s, someone else had done research into the manuscript that James Agee had left because James Agee died just after finishing the book, or, depending who you ask. The book was published posthumously. That's the end story. So this person who dug into the manuscripts believed that the editor had made significant alterations. So they released what is supposed to be a more accurate version of what James Agee wanted to release. So it's going to be a whole thing. But anyway, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to have that in my library. And now I do. Okay, now we're going to get into the book haul proper. And like I said, continuing the format of recent book hauls, we're going to start with ones that were sent to me either by publishers or by subscribers from my bookshop.org wish list. I think there's only one from the wish list this month, but start off with Now I Surrender by Alvaro Enrique. This is translated by Natasha Wimmer. Alvaro Enrique's previous book, I think it's called We Dreamed of Empires, was on the New York Times Best Books of the Year. Yes, You Dreamed of Empires. And it was on the New York Times Best Books of whatever year that was. It was recent. So I've been a little bit curious. I don't have a copy of You Dreamed of Empires, but I have heard good things about this one. I saw some good reviews. And he took part in a sort of variety show that Riverhead put on. This is published by Riverhead, by the way. And it says on it that it comes out March 3rd, so very soon. But anyway, he participated in that, and he was very funny. He involved pets, and it made me even more interested in reading the book. So, what is this about, you might be wondering? A visionary novelist radically recasts the story of how the West was won. I love books that interrogate the notion of the Wild West. In the contested borderlands between Mexico and the United States, a woman flees into the desert after a devastating raid on her dead husband's ranch. A lieutenant colonel in service to the fledgling republic, sent in pursuit of cattle rustlers, discovers he's on the trail of a more dramatic abduction. Decades later, the American and Mexican militaries try to maneuver Geronimo, the most legendary of Apache warriors, into surrender. In our own day, a family travels through the region in search of a truer version of the past. Now I Surrender is a searing elegy for a way of life that was an incarnation of almost unimaginable freedom, and an homage to the spark in us that still thrills to its memory. Sounds really intriguing. So I'm looking forward to reading this, and I'm so glad that they sent me a copy of this. Here is how it opens. In every book haul, I like to read a little bit from the opening of the book to give you a sense of what the writing is. As people have said that it's very helpful to get a sense of like the tone of the book sometimes. So book 1, Janos, 1836. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. In the beginning, things appear. Writing is a defiant gesture we've long since gotten used to. Where there was nothing, somebody put something, and now everybody sees it. Let's stop there. That seems like a pretty good teaser for Now I Surrender by Alvaro Enrique and translated by Natasha Wimmer. Coming March 3rd, according to this date on the spine. Those dates can change, but I believe that that is still accurate. And if you're interested in this book, or again, any of the other ones, I have links to bookshop.org. So if you want more information about them, if you want to make a purchase, you can use that link. Otherwise, supporting your local library is a great thing to do, or supporting your local independent bookstore more directly than using bookshop.org. Today I'm wearing a t-shirt from Raven, which is a bookstore in Lawrence, Kansas, that I would really like to visit someday, and hopefully I will. Next, I got a little pack from Scribner to celebrate The Infamous Gilberts by Angela Tomasky. This book is already out, and it sounds really intriguing. I actually also have access to the audio, so I'm hoping that I'm going to catch up to this book very soon, because it really sounds like a book that I would like. Now, with the finished copy of the book, they sent me this postcard, which has the cover of the book, and on the back, I don't know, is this a postcard? Probably not. But it looks like a library card on the back, which is just kind of fun. And it also came with this little bag of potpourri, which is also kind of fun and nice. Anyway, The Infamous Gilberts, it is on sale now. It comes from Scribner, and this was one of my most anticipated books of 2026. I will link that video in the description box down below if you'd like to see what else was on that list. Here is what this one is about. The keys to the mighty Gothic mansion of Thornwalk are about to be handed over to a luxury hotelier. They will spend millions in the restoration, but in doing so, what will be erased? You, dear reader, are invited on a tour of the crumbling estate, guided by your enigmatic narrator, Maximus. Each room holds a secret, from the bolt on the blue room door to a silver spoon in a wooden box. Wrapped around these seemingly insignificant objects are the stories of the 5 fatherless children who lived here. Taking us from the eve of World War II to the early 2000s, Angela Tomasky's debut is an indelible portrait of a once grand family brought to its knees. What begins as a bucolic snapshot of 5 beribboned children playing cricket on the lawn soon unravels as the world changes into a place they no longer know. The Infamous Gilberts is the darkly funny tale of an unusual family lovingly portrayed. I love books about a quirky family, and this sounds like a very interesting approach, the whole idea of using a tour through a house and the objects that are found in it as a way of unraveling the history of a family. It just sounds very intriguing to me. So here is how the book begins. Thornwalk House, Somerset, 2002. Chapter 1, The Bolt on the Blue Room Door. Welcome to Thornwalk, home of the last of the Winford Gilberts. Lydia, Hugo, Annabel, Jeremy, and Rosalind. The downfall of this great family was once the subject of much tawdry gossip and many a sensational headline, and perhaps you hold in your heart some remnant, some echo of this. If so, I ask you to let it go, and here, with me, meet them all anew. Doesn't that sound really intriguing? I'm so excited to get into that book. Probably on audio, but I'm really happy to have the physical copy as well. Now, Sean Breathe's Books actually put me in touch with the publisher of Blurred Faces by Allan Radcliffe. This is an edition from Fairlight. I think is it Fairlight? Or, it's Fairlight Books. I thought it was Fairlight Modern. It's Fairlight Books. And this is a book that is out in the UK. They are planning to release it in the United States. They had said May, but I couldn't find a listing for this on bookshop.org. So I'm assuming that May is when it will be published here, but I don't have a link to bookshop.org to share with you. So anyway, this is Blurred Faces by Allan Radcliffe, and they sent it to me in advance of it being released in the United States. Now, Allan Radcliffe published a book called The Old Haunts, and I just recently got a copy of that book from my bookshop.org wish list from a subscriber. And I really want to read that. And I'm thrilled to have another book of his to be there waiting in the wings once I catch up to The Old Haunts, hopefully soon. And I'm very much looking forward to that. It's a tiny little thing. Hopefully it'll be easy to fit in pretty quickly. It looks like it's less than 200 pages, so that's cool as well. And it has French flaps. I love a book with French flaps. Here's what it's about. Two men meet on a dating app. It's supposed to be a casual encounter between strangers. Jordan is only back in Edinburgh to visit his complicated family. I love a complicated family. And Davy is reeling from a painful breakup. Yet Davy recognizes Jordan as someone he knew long ago when they were both closeted teenagers at the same school. Back then, Jordan was relentlessly bullied, and Davy was one of the bullies. But Jordan doesn't remember him at all. Against the backdrop of a city steeped in memories, Davy and Jordan find themselves drawn together again and again. A fragile intimacy blossoms between them, but can anyone ever be free of their past? Sounds like a very interesting story. Here is how it begins. Jordan. David lives 1.07 miles away. I walk the blue line on the screen of my phone, the usual thrill and shame in my belly. I keep stopping to look at myself in car windows and worry at what's left of my hair. His address turns out to be a cul-de-sac off New Haven Road that's barely on the map. And that is how Blurred Faces by Allan Radcliffe begins, coming soon to the United States. And then I was very happy to get a copy of Everyone Still Here by Llydan Ny Quinn. If I've pronounced that wrong incorrectly, please let me know in the comment section down below. This came from FSG Originals, and again, tiny little book, should be pretty easy to get to. This is a collection of short stories, and I'm doing a thing with short stories this year, so hopefully I will be getting to at least one story in this collection sometime very soon, and I believe this one is on sale now as well, and I'm just very happy to have this finished copy of the book. Here's what it is about. In Ireland, a place where the past thrums beneath every surface and refuses to stay buried, teenagers gather to study cadavers. Nearby, flowers appear in an anonymous act of protest. Everyone Still Here collects 6 searching, lucid stories about people. Mothers, fathers, brothers, sons, strangers, living through ordinary and catastrophic loss. Llydan Ny Quinn is a writer of unusual moral power and precision whose debut is at once an epitaph and an accusation. I'm really into Irish writers right now. I read a bunch of Irish writers before Joel and I went to Ireland and Scotland, and they've held a special place in my heart ever since. So the fact that these are an Irish author in Ireland is also very appealing to me. In fact, the bio says Llydan Ny Quinn is a writer from the north of Ireland. So there you go. Now, in the case of short stories, what I do is I just read a little bit from the first story in the collection. And the first story here is called, I thought I was about to say Everyone's Still Here, but that's not correct. It's called We All Go. My parents were hijacked before I was born. It was just before, 2 nights prior. I think it's important. I don't know why. They were driving out of the city on a road that got narrow, a bad artery, and then they were stopped in the road by a clot, people with masks and crowbars. My dad was driving, so it was my dad who braked. The people in the road yelled, "Get out of the car." I apologize, a really loud truck just drove by. Hopefully you didn't really hear it very much. But that is the opening of Everyone Still Here by Llydan Ny Quinn. So excited to have this book as well. And then I got this from Hogarth. They actually emailed me asking if I wanted a copy, and I read the description and was like, oh, yes, I do. It's Waiting on a Friend by Natalie Adler. I think somehow it had just passed me by when I was researching books for 2026. So I'm very happy they reached out to me and asked if I wanted a copy. This will be coming in May of 2026. And here is the description of it. New York City, East Village, 1984. A young woman with the power to see the ghosts of her friends is haunted by the one who refuses to return. A dazzling, big-hearted debut novel of friendship and community during a time of devastation and defiance. Renata is a little slur for a lesbian, about town, who can see ghosts, something she's doing more and more of lately, as too many of her friends are dying of a new, terrifying disease. When Renata's best friend Mark dies of complications from AIDS, Renata is devastated by the loss of the person she loved most in the world. And to her disappointment and increasing despair, Mark seems unwilling or unable to return for the proper goodbye they were both denied. While Renata waits anxiously for Mark, she must stay vigilant. A mysterious police-like force has begun ridding their East Village neighborhood of anything abnormal or inexplicable. What first seems like a scam reveals itself to be far more sinister, targeting the soul of Renata's community. With her band of lovably eccentric pals and lovers, Renata is determined to fight back against the erasure of her friends' memories and the sanitizing of her beloved New York. But haunting her every step is Mark, the one ghost who stubbornly refuses to appear. Both heartbreaking and healing, tragic and triumphant, Waiting on a Friend is a magical retelling of queer history and a celebration of youth and camaraderie. With pathos and humor, empathy, and an edge, Natalie Adler freshly reimagines the past for a new generation, reclaiming the spirit of resistance and determination that would become one of the era's defining legacies. I am from Long Island, which is connected to New York City. And so it's a subject that is very interesting to me, especially since heading into the modern era of like insane wealth in New York City. A lot of the colorful neighborhoods are disappearing. And the West Village, which used to be a very gay area, has been fairly whitewashed, and even Hell's Kitchen is sort of moving in that same direction. So stories about the sanitizing of New York are pretty interesting to me, so I'm intrigued. Consider me hooked. Here is how the book opens. Let's see. Part 1, Ghosts. When Mark died, I thought I'd start seeing him around more. I saw John Labriglio right after his memorial, standing on 14th Street with his hands in his pockets, keeping tabs on who showed. I helped Billy Kellerman save his beautiful clothes from being thrown into the trash and then comforted him after his two-faced ex made off with his boots. The first of the Davids to die, David Green, bugged me for a month about getting in touch with his lover, who had died in December. I wanted to know why he thought I could help, if ghosts gossip or what, but he just kept asking about Paul. I said to him, "Look, David, you can't get possessive. Why don't you try Ohio, since that's where they took him away?" And that's the opening of Waiting on a Friend by Natalie Adler. Sounds very intriguing. I just wanted to make sure that pile wasn't going to fall over. All right, the final book that was sent to me, and it is a play, but we're including it here. Now, this came from my bookshop.org wishlist, and I know already that this came from Marcia Johansson. You're the best, Marcia Johansson. Thank you so much. This is The Piano Lesson, a play by August Wilson. At this point, I think I've read Fences and 6 guitars or 7 guitars, something like that. So those are the only 2 plays by August Wilson that I have read, and I would really like to read more. So here is The Piano Lesson, which has a film adaptation on Netflix that I would like to watch after I read the play. Danielle Deadweiler is supposed to be amazing in it. Can't wait, and thank you, Marcia. In his second Pulitzer Prize winner, August Wilson fashions a haunting and dramatic work. At the heart of the play stands the ornately carved upright piano that has been gathering dust in the parlor of Bernice Charles's Pittsburgh home. When Boy Willie, her exuberant brother, bursts into her life with his dream of buying the same Mississippi land that their family had worked as slaves, he plans to sell their antique piano for the cash he needs to stake his future. Bernice refuses to sell, though, clinging to the piano as a reminder of the history that is their family legacy. It sounds so interesting. Can't wait. I have a bunch of plays that I've collected over the last few months already, and I have a bunch more coming at the end of this book haul. So I really need to start digging into them, and I'm excited to start doing that. All right, let's talk about the books that I got for myself. First, so at the end of 2025, because of the holidays, Joel and I came into some gift cards, and I decided to order a book that I have wanted for almost a year now, ever since I heard that this book was reissued by New York Review of Books, and after I watched the movie that was adapted from it. Grand Hotel by Vicky Baum. This is translated, but it doesn't have the name of the translators on the cover, so let me get that for you. Translated from the German by Basil Creighton with revisions by Margot Betauer Dembo. So Grand Hotel, was it 31, 32? I think that's the year it won the Best Picture Oscar. In the early years of the Oscars, the eligibility period, I can speak, straddled 2 different years. Like it would start in like the summer and run to the following summer. So they had like the very first Oscar ceremony was for 1927 through 28. And then the next one was 28 to 29. And it was very confusing. So 1934, they just made it a calendar year. But anyway, Grand Hotel won Best Picture back in that zone. And I watched the movie about a year ago. And I didn't think that I was going to dislike it, but I didn't expect to be so entertained by it. And that's when I noticed that it was adapted from a book. And when I looked into the book, I saw that New York Review of Books had reissued it. And I have wanted it ever since. So with that gift card money, I got myself a copy of this. I ordered it from Montana Book Company, and it came in the month of February. Here's the description of this book. A grand hotel in the center of 1920s Berlin serves as a microcosm of the modern world in Vicky Baum's celebrated novel, a Weimar-era bestseller that retains all of its verve and luster today. Among the guests of the hotel is Dr. Otterschlag, a World War I veteran whose face has been sliced in half by a shell. Day after day, he emerges to read the paper in the lobby, discreetly inquiring at the desk if the letter he's been awaiting for years has arrived. Then there is Grusinskaya, a great ballerina now fighting a losing battle not so much against age as against her fear of it, who may or may not be made for Gagern, a sleek professional thief. Herr Preissing also checks in, the director of a family farm that isn't as flourishing as it appears, who would never imagine that Kringelein, his underling, a timorous, petty clerk he's bullied for years, has also come to Berlin, determined to live at last now that he's received a medical death sentence. All these characters and more, with all their secrets and aspirations, come together and come alive in the pages of Baum's delicious and disturbing masterpiece. Need I say more? I mean, that's fascinating, right? So here is how this book opens. I'm going to skip past the introduction. Here we go. The hall porter was a little white about the gills as he came out of the number 7 phone booth. He went to get his cap, which he had left on the radiator. "What is it?" said the operator at the switchboard, earphones over his head and red and green plugs between his fingers. "They've suddenly taken my wife to the hospital. I don't know what that means. She says it's beginning, but good heavens, it can't have got that far already." His wife is in labor. So that's the opening of Grand Hotel by Vicky Baum, and translated, I wish it was on the cover, because now I have to find it again, by Basil Creighton with revisions by Margot Betauer Dembo. Very excited. Now, let's get into the books. Well, technically, that was a book that I bought for myself, but it was with a gift card. I spent actual money on Tough Guy by Rachel Reed. This past Saturday, as I'm filming this, Joel and I did a queer book club meeting for FMC Books in Missoula. It's a romance bookstore in Missoula, recently opened, and they asked us if we would help them launch a queer book group. So this was our second. We're going to do a third, and then I think they're going to start rotating among some other people to get other perspectives. The 3 books that Joel and I will cover are male-for-male romances. And then they're going to pivot around from there. So Heated Rivalry was the book that we had read for the second meeting. And I had said that I didn't want to go further in the series until the second season of the show came out. But during the course of the discussion, someone had mentioned things about Tough Guy that they thought I would particularly like. So Tough Guy is the 3rd book in this series, and probably going to be at least part of the focus of season 2 of Heated Rivalry. And she sold me pretty well on it. And then Joel kind of echoed, he's like, "I think you would like that one." So here it is. I'll probably be reading it at some point. I have read 3 Rachel Reed books this year, so I may wait a little bit, give myself a bit of time. Not that I have disliked any of them. I just feel like I'm going to do some other things, and then maybe I'll come back around to this. Anyway, here's what this is about. Pro hockey star Ryan Price may be an enforcer, but off the ice, he struggles with anxiety. Recently traded to Toronto, he's determined to make a fresh start in the city's dynamic LGBTQ+ village. The last thing he expects to find in his new neighborhood is a blast from the past in the fabulous form of Fabien Salah. Aspiring musician Fabien loathes hockey, but that doesn't stop him from being attracted to a certain burly, ginger-bearded defenseman. He hasn't forgotten the kiss they almost shared back in high school, and the chemistry between them has only intensified. Ooh. Here is how Tough Guy begins. There's a prologue. I'm going to skip the prologue. Let's get to chapter 1. Chapter 1. Fabien Salah hated hockey. Clearly, there was some sort of game happening today because the subway train was packed with people wearing blue Toronto Guardians jerseys. Fabien wished he could sit down. He didn't like standing in the middle of these people, being judged by their boring, ignorant brains. There was at least one dull jock who was openly sneering at Fabien in disgust. It's the opening of Tough Guy by Rachel Reed. Okay, I stumbled upon this in my local used bookstore. And it sounded really interesting. Well, what originally caught my attention is that this is an olive edition. So olive editions are put out by, I want to say, Harper? Yeah, Harper Perennial does the olive editions. They're put out for a limited amount of time. The one that they released for, or the set that they released for this year is banned books. I have 2 of them on my shelf. So I saw this and was immediately intrigued, pulled the book out, and it was, we are taking only what we need, stories by Stephanie Powell Watts. I read the description on the inside flap of the book because the back has a quote. And it sounded really intriguing. And also this year, I'm doing a short story thing. So felt like it was right in the wheelhouse of that. So hopefully I'll be reading at least one of these stories very, very soon. Now here is that description. In these powerfully rendered, prize-winning stories, working-class African Americans across the South strive for meaning and search for direction in lives shaped by forces beyond their control. The 10 stories in this resonant collection deal with both the ties that bind and the gulf that separates generations, from children confronting the fallibility of their own parents for the first time to adults finding themselves forced to start over again and again. Startling, intimate, and prescient on their own, these stories build to a kaleidoscopic understanding of both the individual and the collective Black experience over the last 50 years in the American South. I mean, good stuff, right? All right, here is the first story. The first story is Family Museum of the Ancient Postcards. And it begins, in April 1976, my Uncle Silas on my daddy's side got out of jail early after 2 years and 5 months of time served for arson. We welcomed him with dinners and backslaps, ignored the pink guilty splotches on his face, places on his skin that would never fully heal, regarded him with a child's wonder, his disappearing act of magic trick. Now you don't, but now you do see him. It's the beginning of We Are Taking Only What We Need, a story collection by Stephanie Powell Watts. Okay. Also, recently, I was going through my local used bookstore, and I just decided to go through Barbara Kingsolver's books because, you know what? I love Barbara Kingsolver. And I had seen this book in the past, and it popped back up again on their shelves. It's Homeland and Other Stories. It's a short story collection. I'm doing a short story thing this year, and it's by Barbara Kingsolver, one of my favorite authors. So I had to have it. With the same wit and sensitivity that have come to characterize her highly praised and beloved novels, Animal Dreams and The Bean Trees, this comes from a time when those were really her only novels, Barbara Kingsolver gives us a rich and emotionally resonant collection of 12 stories, spreading her memorable characters over landscapes ranging from Northern California to the hills of Eastern Kentucky and the Caribbean island of St. Lucia. Kingsolver tells stories of hope, momentary joy, and powerful endurance. I'm so excited to read these. And here is how it begins. So the first story is called Homeland. It opens, my great-grandmother belonged to the Bird Clan. Hers was one of the fugitive bands of Cherokee who resisted capture in the year that General Winfield Scott was in charge of prodding the forest people from their beds and removing them westward. I can speak. That's Homeland Stories by Barbara Kingsolver. All right, 3 more books before we get into the play. And then just today, I was actually back at my local used bookstore and picked up 2 books. One of them is another Barbara Kingsolver. So this is High Tide in Tucson, Essays from Now or Never. And not only did I not own a copy of this book, not only have I not read this book, but when I saw that it was a hardcover, I thought, I wonder if this is a first edition. So I opened it up, and it is a first edition. Look at this author photo. I love Barbara Kingsolver. This is not what she looks like anymore. She's a lot older, as people get. But it's just fun to see an old author photo on the back. So let's see. In these 25 newly conceived essays, she returns once again to her favored literary terrain to explore the themes of family, community, and the natural world. And because we're running a little long on time, I'm going to leave it at that and just look at these end papers. I love it. I'm so glad I found this book today. All right. The first essay, if I can get to it. There's a preface, and it has those deckled edges that I don't really like because it makes it difficult to flip. Okay, so the first one is High Tide in Tucson. Look at this illustration. I love it. A hermit crab lives in my house. Here in the desert, he's hiding out from local animal ordinances at minimum, and maybe even the international laws of native species transport. For sure, he's an outlaw against nature. So be it. High Tide in Tucson by Barbara Kingsolver. All right, the other book I saw today was, I wanted a copy of Black Boy by Richard Wright for a while. I think Olive Editions did a copy of that in their set this year about banned books. But, sorry, Teddy is walking around me. I saw this, and it's an old edition of it. The last copyright, I think, was 1947. It's just a beautiful edition of the book, and I had credit to get both of the hardcovers, so I did. And this, if you're unfamiliar, is the moving and terrible story of how a Negro boy, it's dated language, grew up in the South. It is the story of Richard Wright's own life, not fiction, but the record of how things were with him, set down straight. As such, it is a book to challenge the thinking of a nation, which probably gives you a good idea why this would have been a banned book. And here is how it opens. Oh my goodness, deckled edges, the bane of my existence in this book haul, because I can't get, here we go. Chapter 1. One winter morning in the long ago, 4-year-old days of my life, I found myself standing before a fireplace, warming my hands over a mound of glowing coals, listening to the wind whistle past the house outside. And let's stop there. That's Black Boy by Richard Wright. I'm happy to have this beautiful old edition of the book. And then the last one before we get into the plays. So Joel and I have been collecting Abby Jimenez's books, even though we've listened to all of them on audio. They're right here on my shelf, all together. But because they're all in paperback, we decided to wait for her most recent book to be available in paperback to get a copy for our shelves. So, Say You'll Remember Me. And actually, Joel got this, and he got this with the remains of a gift card that he had gotten to Chapter 1, which is a bookstore in Hamilton that we also love. We're blessed to be surrounded by a lot of great bookstores in Montana. But anyway, Say You'll Remember Me. I'm just going to give you a little pitch. Basically, these two meet and agree to go on a date. It turns out to be the best date of both of their lives, and this date is amazing. It really is amazing. Abby Jimenez is great at chemistry. The thing is, the day after this amazing date, the woman is moving to California, and the man is going to stay behind in the Minneapolis area. But this date was so amazing, and they like each other so much that they can't really let each other go. And they start pursuing a long distance thing. It's a really sweet book. Abby Jimenez has not missed for me. And I would encourage you, if you're into the idea of her books, I am a huge fan. Chapter 1 is called Xavier. You want me to do what? I asked. The middle-aged woman stood on the other side of the exam table, her dog between us. He was looking back and forth at our faces like he understood the conversation. For his sake, I sincerely hoped he didn't. The openings, a little like the woman wants him, Xavier, he's a vet, to put her dog down, and he does not do it. Long story short, I just want you to know, he does not do it. The dog is fine. And Abby Jimenez always has the thing, the dog will never die in her books. So trust that it turns out okay. All right. I'm not going to get into descriptions too much of the plays that we have to get through. I'm just going to kind of list them off. I love Tennessee Williams, so I saw American Blues, 5 short plays by Tennessee Williams, and I thought I have to have that. The Skin of Our Teeth is a Pulitzer Prize winning play by Thornton Wilder. Had to have that. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, back to August Wilson. So this is another one. I have seen the movie adaptation of this already. I'd be very happy to read the play. This is a weird title. Some of you may know it. The Effect of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds by Paul Zindel. This won a Pulitzer Prize for drama. I don't think it won the Tony Award for Best Play, but I'm pretty sure it won a Pulitzer Prize for drama, which is the appeal here. The Lion in Winter by James Goldman. I've seen the film adaptation, have not read the play. Wait Until Dark. And one of the nice things about these editions of the plays is that in the opening, a lot of them have a photo of this stage. And this stage set looks almost exactly like the set that they use in the film adaptation of Wait Until Dark, which I have seen. So in Wait Until Dark, the movie, Audrey Hepburn plays a blind lady. And there is something in her apartment that these criminals want, so they have to try to figure out how to get into her apartment and get it. And it's a bit of a thriller. All right, Dancing at Lufthansa by Brian Friel. When I started reading Irish books and authors, somebody recommended this to me. I thought I knew who it was, but it turned out it wasn't them. So if it was you, thank you for the recommendation. Death Trap, a play by Ira Levin, who wrote Rosemary's Baby and The Stepford Wives. We did already watch the film adaptation, but I'd like to read the play. And then 2 Neil Simon books or plays, Chapter 2, a comedy in 2 acts, and Brighton Beach Memoirs. I think Brighton Beach Memoirs is probably Neil Simon's most famous. But anyway, there you have it. Those are the books that I brought into my library in the month of February. A great many of them. I'd love to hear which ones you're interested in, which ones you would recommend I start quickly. If you have recommendations based on my interest in any of these books, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.